Welcome to the Teamwork Advantage podcast with Gregg Gregory. Join us as Gregg interviews powerful thought leaders and successful team and leadership experts from across the country on teamwork, leadership, and organizational culture. Now let's check in for this week's episode.
Welcome back to the Teamwork Advantage, a podcast that is dedicated to the growth, development, and advancement in three critical areas: teamwork, leadership, and culture. What we're going to talk about today is a little bit different in one aspect, but yet it lends itself right into our theme of TLC, teamwork, leadership, culture. So joining us today is a remarkable guest, Joe Curcillo, an advisor, confidant, and friend who actually thrives in countless lanes of expertise. He's a master communicator, a lawyer, an engineer, former judge, prosecuting attorney, private investigator, fine artist, woodworker, and mentalist. Yeah, that's right. You heard that right. He navigates these diverse domains effortlessly, bringing a unique and holistic approach to just about everything that he does. In his role as a fractional executive, we're going to learn a little bit about that today, as well as a consultant. Joe shares the secrets of a more fulfilling life and career by encouraging multidisciplinary mindset, embracing different ways of thinking. He helps organizations and individuals alike discover more robust solutions to their challenges. Get ready to expand those horizons, folks, because I tell you right now, open your mind. As Zig Ziglar used to say, a mind is like a parachute. It works better when it's open. Open your mind to the limitless possibilities of cross-disciplinary thinking. Joe Curcillo, where every lane of expertise basically helps create a truly remarkable journey of professional growth. Hey, Joe, welcome back. It's your second time here to the podcast.
It is so good to be back. Glad to visit with you again, Greg.
This is fun because last time we talked about your first book, and we're going to go into something an entirely different direction this time. And it's kind of fascinating about it. But very quickly, just you've got a lot back there. And I know we're going to get into some of these, lawyer. And by the way, you're not the first person I've had on our podcast, recovering lawyer. So
yes, but do they know what a recovering lawyer is?
A
recovering lawyer. I drink now because I want to, not because I have to.
No, there we go. But he's also an engineer, a master communicator, anxious to learn about fine artist and woodworker. And I think last time we chatted about the mentalist aspect. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did you get to where you are today in just real brief 30, 40 seconds?
30, 40 seconds. How did I get here? I realized at a very young age that I had what was probably best termed as professional ADD. I could not stand being pigeonholed. I couldn't stand being in a lane. And even back as far as college, I was an artist in high school and got the art award. They wanted me to go to art school. And I said, no, I have to go another direction. And I became a civil engineer. And I told everyone that someday I was going to go to law school. And everyone said, this is not the right path. And I said, yes, it is. And I did my own thing. And I got my law degree and became a lawyer after being a civil engineer. And my entire life has been about finding a different lane to live in every chance I get.
Yeah. It's really what keeps you energized. I can tell you, to all the listeners here, your attitude and positivity is just on a second level. People don't seem to have that. You and I have now known each other for several years. Every time I'm around you, I see that energy. I feel that energy. I think, Pitbull might outpace you just a little, but
Well, what it is people talk, and I'm going to say people now, they call it work-life balance. For me, I just called it, what can I do to have fun and maintain a relationship with my banker? And I always tried
a positive relationship with your banker.
Positive relationship with my banker. And it's always been for me, my work-life balance is because I always am doing something that I totally love. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just start with a pet peeve. No, I am not a multitasker. I don't like multitasking.
Right.
If I do something, it's whole hog, and then I switch to something else on a schedule.
Yeah, you're not doing two things at once.
No,
you're not being a lawyer and a mentalist at the same time.
No, absolutely. Absolutely not. I just want to make that clear. Because sometimes people hear multidisciplinary, multitasking. No, not at all. Not
No.
at all.
Now, multitasking is an entirely different thing, which talk to many people, I'll tell you, is not really possible. The brain can't do but one thing at a time.
That
So,
is exactly right.
so so let's talk just a little bit here. You've got a new book. Your
Yep.
new book is called The Generalist's Advantage.
Yep.
So now you're taking what you've been doing and you've turned that into a book.
I have. Basically, yeah, let me tell you. And I have written, this would be my 5th book, one strictly for the entertainment industry. And I looked at those, the next, that was strictly a set aside. Then I looked at the next 3 and I realized I can't create boxes for myself because I'm not happy there. And I realized I think the world needed to hear my message, which is the world coming into the future, because of how much in motion it is, needs more generalists and not more specialists. Now, I think specialists have a great place, but generalists bring something to the table that is phenomenal when you look towards the future.
Right. And what's happened, I think, in the last probably 25 years or thereabouts, you'll know better than I do. We have been teaching our kids and we've been teaching people specialize, get very niche, get into a market, get into something, dive deep. And today we're really hurting in the trades world.
Yeah.
Trades workers are, they're just hard because everybody says you got to go to college. So they're pigeonholing them to go to college to get this job. And, trades, whether you're plumbing, construction, carpentry, doesn't matter, flag, masonry. We've lost a lot of those, and a lot of those people can do multiple things. And so kind of a key fact.
And also too, let me say this, Greg, a lot of people have done multiple things, but they suppress those other things in favor of the primary lane that they're living in. Meaning
At that moment.
yeah, well, no, and not at that moment, but sometimes for their entire lives. I know people who, for instance, I worked in law and I was a trial lawyer, and I had friends of mine who, when I would talk to them, I found out one loved writing fiction, one loved being an artist, but they put that all on a shelf when they graduated law school and never went backwards. My mission today is to tell everybody, get that stuff off the shelf, bring it back into your life and let it improve who you are and be more than you are today.
And then use it even in whatever you are doing.
Exactly. And by the way, one of my favorite topics is people who have done what I'm proposing have changed the world. Okay. And I love looking at people and saying, Snow White changed our world. Now, some of your listeners may not know this, but Snow White was a character that Disney created, and the artist who rendered that image of Snow White that we all know in Disney is actually the face of the great actress Hedy Lamarr. Okay? Hedy Lamarr was a brilliant actress, a phenomenal actress, just stunning on the screen. Everybody loved her. But maybe today, maybe yesterday, maybe tomorrow, you'll be driving in your car and you'll be on a cell phone and you're going to keep a call going with somebody over a period of miles. Do you ever think about how many towers you've connected to in that travel?
Oh.
No, you don't have to, because signal hopping makes that possible. Hedy Lamarr created the technology that allows for signal hopping. She tinkered with electronics in her basement. Her alternate lane was creating electronics and radio waves. She created the technology that makes signal hopping today a reality.
Now that I will absolutely use in my teamwork because I talk about handoffs. So that will be a great place to use that.
Yeah. And that is, to me, that's empowering. And by the way, when we say we've all struggled now, everybody wants to be a specialist. I love looking at people and shaking them up and going, this idea of generalists changing the world didn't start yesterday. Hedy Lamarr was in the 40s when she created this.
Right.
Okay. Let's go back to And let me ask you the next question I love pointing out to people. When was the last time you handled a slice of bread?
Mm.
Everybody uses sliced bread to make a sandwich. You get a
Right. It
delicate
was invented
sandwich.
by accident.
Well, no, it was not. Sliced bread was not invented by accident.
Yeah.
Sliced bread, and was created by a man named Otto Rohwedder. Otto Rohwedder was born in 1880. He was a jeweler. He was apprentice jeweler, grew up, owned 3 jewelry stores in St. Louis, Missouri. Got bored with jewelry work, went on to become an optician. He went to the optometry school of Chicago. He didn't like that either, so he got into the baking industry, and he was convinced the world needed sliced bread. He also was convinced that same machine could bag the bread. And everyone said that is stupid. The baking industry hasn't changed since the Bible. What are you talking about? And then he built his first factory, created the bread slicing machine, and the factory burned down. He rebuilt from scratch, built a new factory, and all of a sudden in the late 1920s, somebody created something called the at-home toaster, which needed a specifically sized slice of bread. And Stroman and Otto Rohwedder started producing sliced bread. And he took all the engineering and all the skill he learned in machining jewelry and everything else because he was fascinated with machinery. He brought sliced bread to an industry that hadn't changed in years. That is what people do when they go into a different lane. They bring something with them that's amazing.
That's fascinating when we stop to think about that. And that again, it goes back to having the open mind. You see something, feel something, and most things are born out of a necessity.
Absolutely.
Now, in that case, it was out of something he thought, and he created the necessity for him.
But nobody in that lane for thousands of years ever thought about what he thought was real because the specialist didn't see to the right or to the left. He saw it holistically and came in from the outside.
Yeah.
And by the way, I mean, I could drone on about people in history that have done that because if people introduce things from other lanes into their lane of specialty, again, moving further into time, Paul Winchell, the ventriloquist, he worked with dummies and they sat on his lap and talked and he had a great career. He walked away from the career. And now think about this. A man who worked with puppets his whole life, hooked together with a guy named Dr. Heimlich. So many people remember the Heimlich maneuver. Well, Paul Winchell got together with Dr. Heimlich and created the first artificial heart. And their patent was bought by the University of Utah and later led to the Jarvik heart. So
Using mechanisms of a puppet aspect.
in his mind, that's how it worked. So what I'm pointing out is people that step into a lane they don't belong in can do amazing things.
Yeah. It's a classic example as well when you bring a leader in who has not been in that industry.
Yep.
And they can bring an entirely different perspective to the table.
Absolutely. And and by the way, when you get a leader, depending on how many lanes that leader has lived in, you end up in a position where that leader can speak to every silo in the business because of all their vast experience. They're not pigeonholed in finance, pigeonholed in leadership. They're everything.
Yeah. One of my clients had had a background strictly in accounting his entire life. And then he comes over to an entirely different lane, runs it. Everybody's laughing. He doesn't know anything about our industry, yet he turned that entire team around in about 18 to 24 months, getting with absolutely no background in understanding that industry.
Absolutely. That's really what it's all about, is that daring, and as I say, when you step into a different lane and you bring an idea in, you don't know that it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what's awesome.
So let's talk a little bit here. What are some practical steps that somebody, if somebody's listening to this podcast now and they're in their Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, hybrid environment, remote environment, it doesn't matter the environment they're in when they're doing it. What are some ways you might help somebody explore that?
Oh, let's start at the beginning, which is when somebody is sitting there saying, I want to learn more and do more. The first thing I ask them is, what have they put on a shelf and what have they given up on to become an expert in their lane? And I like to talk to people about that because I want them to create what I call their personal symphony, which is every instrument has a different purpose. Every lane you've ever lived in has a different purpose. Find where everything you've ever done fits into what you're doing today. Maybe you were a lifeguard at one point. Maybe you were a newspaper carrier. Maybe you worked at a fast food restaurant. Take a few minutes and decide what you've learned from those careers that you can use today. The second thing is, I always tell people, I don't go to bed at night unless I can answer one question every day. And that question is, what did I learn new today? And every day I strive to learn something new before I put my head on my pillow. That is the greatest start because you might find something that makes you happy. I joke about it, but about 6, 8 months ago, I decided to learn how to work with resin epoxy because instead of making a wood tabletop, I thought a resin epoxy tabletop would look cool. I studied everything I could about it. And then all of a sudden, about 3 months ago, my wife looks at me and says, we need new tables for the living room. I got an idea. Okay.
And how does she respond when you go, I have an idea?
Let's put it this way. My wife and I are going on January next year is our 35th wedding anniversary. She has spent so much time on the Joe roller coaster that she doesn't react anymore. I mean, this is a woman who I came home one day and said to her, we don't have anything planned this weekend. I'm opening my restaurant. And she looked at me and said, what restaurant? So, no, she's a trooper.
But I don't remember restaurateur on this list of.
Yeah, because that lasted about 6 months, 8 months. They just someone the other day said I was there a year. I don't remember that.
Okay.
But no, it was something I did for a short spell because I wanted to get it off my chest and do it.
Okay.
So I did it and sold out.
Good.
Yeah.
So we do that. So we make a list of things that we've learned.
Yep.
Then what do we do once we've got that list? I've got a list that's, 40, 50, 60 things long of what I've learned. What do I do next?
Okay. The next thing you want to do is what I call find your controlling question. And here's what I mean by that. What is it that you specifically want to learn about the industry you're going into? For instance, yes, I'm a woodworker. Really what I am is I was trained as a cabinet maker. My father was a carpenter and built houses. I can tell you right now, I am the last person you would want to come in and frame your house, put joists in and do studs. That's not my lane. My controlling question was, what did I want to learn about wood? I wanted to learn how to make it pretty. I wanted to learn how to do things that people would admire when they saw the wood. And I narrowed that focus down. And I was younger. I went and got a job in a cabinet making shop. And I got Bob, the guy named Bob, who, by the way, only had 7 fingers. He'd been in the business a long time and drank a lot of beer when he was working. But Bob taught me how to make cabinets. And I have done that throughout my house. I finished woodwork because it's something I loved. So what I tell people is narrow down exactly what it is you want to learn, then find a mentor. Find someone that can teach you. When I opened my restaurant, it was a chef. Even when I opened my law firm, I had a partner law firm who had started 5 years before me, and we talked constantly so I knew what steps I was taking. Everything I have ever done, I found someone that could share things with me. So narrow down what it is you want to learn, find a mentor, and second, I want to say third, you got to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, it's not going to be a work-life balance. So at that point, you're going to know if you love it or don't. And then if you love it, Stop watching cat videos on YouTube and watch every video on YouTube about what it is you want to know, because we have that advantage.
Oh, the advantage today, and I'm hearing it in so many different places, is just don't even Google it, YouTube it,
Yeah,
because it's there. And
absolutely.
I think the instructions on YouTube are better than what you get in the box from IKEA, but that's a
Oh,
whole other story. So,
true story. True story.
so when we think about this, are there ways that we can implement this? Let's say we like our career, we like the job we're doing. Maybe we're working at an IT help desk and we really like it, but we've got a passion with something else. Is there a way that we might find how we can marry our passion with something with what we're doing?
Absolutely. And I think that is a truly individual journey. And what I mean by that is, for me, and I do talk about it in my book, but for me, I married everything together almost naturally.
Hmm.
And I look at things from a very broad view and do what I call a broad spectrum analysis of everything. So I pull from everything constantly. And for instance, last week I spoke to a group of young aspiring trial lawyers getting ready to go into their final year of wider law school. And while I was talking to them, I was showing them how I would try a case as a lawyer. I mean, I have over 150 jury trials. So my experience, it's very robust in that area. And they wanted me to talk about how do I create that? Well, I started talking to them and I said, set the law aside for a moment. Start to paint a picture, your audience, for your jury. Paint a picture so you can see how everything goes together. And the skills that I have as an artist will allow me to see the picture, understand how it layers and how the paints go on. I do the same thing in storytelling because I want the audience to watch me paint a picture. So I jokingly said to the class, imagine yourself being like Bob Ross painting a picture, but that's what you're doing for a jury. So I said, some of them may have been artists in their lives. Some of them may have other jobs that they've had where they had to talk to people. Like one person said she had worked in a phone bank. How many millions of people do you talk to in a phone bank? You look at the jury and you imagine they're all those people you learned. So you start to fuse everything you are into that. Then I told them, you got to have the law and the evidence to make everything work. As an engineer, they were the beams and columns that I would build under my case. And I would know if it was weak because I didn't put something into it. So every person is an individual journey. If someone's in IT and they're working, I think you just said a phone bank, an IT support desk.
Hmm.
Well, what did they do when they were younger? What did they do that they learned from that they can bring in to that call every day? For instance, to me, I worked in the fast food industry. I was a young kid working in fast food. I knew what it was like to flip the heck out of burgers and make Kentucky Fried Chicken and get things moving. And I worked under pressure. And to this day, those lessons I learned still are with me. And I remind myself every time I have a bad day, at least I don't have to clean the grease trap at the end of the night. And that was something I hated and I never want to go back to,
Yeah.
and
It's funny you say that because yesterday I was listening to someone speak and they were talking about dropping the henny oil pot and having to scrub the inside of that. So it's just hilarious that you're bringing that up today.
yeah, well, and I guess that's, yeah, I'm laughing. Go say it's funny I brought it up, but it's also a reality check because I've been in so many lanes. I trip over my lanes in conversation and I step in other people's lanes on a regular basis because I don't ever forget anything I've ever done.
Mhm. I often say I got into what I do as a speaker and trainer because I had a financial background in mortgage banking and finance and numbers, but I also had a background in radio, television, broadcasting a little bit. And I had a background working with somebody who did event planning and production. So I took the Venn diagram of those three, bing, right in the center, landed on speaker and trainer.
Bingo. That's exactly correct. I mean, Yeah,
So it's interesting because when people think generalist, they are thinking somebody who does everything and doesn't really focus in on anything. What you're talking about is take your generalist mentality to help you focus in on something.
absolutely. But I also want to say that, yes, I believe a jack of all trades is a master of integration.
Yes.
So the more
Love that.
you do it,
Say that again for everybody because I love
a,
what you just said.
a jack of all trades is a master of integration.
We've often heard something different. I like that.
No, and this is, in fact, I will tell you that when companies hire me, and I just did a sweet executive team leadership meeting, I don't have one. Oh, actually, I do. Well, I'm not going to take it out. But I presented the CEO with a conductor's baton, declaring him a maestro of integration. And that is what I tell people. I want them to be maestros of integration. I want them to pull from all of their people and every talent in the room so everything shines. Also, too, since I mentioned jack of all trades, I will go back and share one of my favorite stories about that, which is today we've been pushed to be specialists. So everybody knows jack of all trades, a master of none. The reality of it is a jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. But I also want to share that the first time a jack of all trades was ever used in conversation or in print, it was someone was called a Johannes Factotum. Okay. Johannes Factotum was a Johnny Do-It-All. And the person that used that phrase was a man named Robert Greene in 1592, when he saw a presentation and said, "What is going on?
Where did those balloons come from?
I have no idea what just happened. That is freaky as petite. I don't think I hit anything. Maybe I said a magic word."
For those just listening, we just had a rash of balloons, like somebody just completed a task or something on screen.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but no, Robert Greene had seen a play, wrote about it, and said, "This guy is never going anywhere. He is a Johannes Factorum. He's Johnny Do It All. He is not skilled, and he's a generalist. He's not any good." Well, I bet you no one here has ever heard of Robert Greene, who wrote that, but I'm sure that all of you have heard of William Shakespeare, who was the person he was complaining about. So it was meant as a negative, but let's face reality. We all know who William Shakespeare is,
Oh, absolutely.
So I just love bringing that up because to me, that's just, and by the way, I really wish I knew where the balloons came from because I would make that happen again.
Talk to me about how we could do this in our leadership or in our customer service or in our, yeah, you gave a great example earlier about the creative side of it, about painting the picture. Maybe somebody has a musical background so they can create the sound, creating an image. So I get that. But how do we do something, bring it in towards a leadership role?
Well, let me do this. I'm going to tilt towards your teamwork advantage for a moment
Okay.
and say the number one thing you can do as a leader is get the most out of your people. The more people will do for you as a leader, the better a leader you are. And the happier they are doing it, the better a leader you are.
Yes.
Well, in putting that team together, my statement is this: tear down the silos. Tear down the silos. Get all of your employees to collaborate with employees from different silos, because then the expertise of IT will merge with the expertise of marketing, which will merge with the expertise of finance, which will merge with the expertise of sales. And that horizontal level of teamwork is what's going to propel you into the future. If you look at IKEA, Apple, they have all worked with cross-functional and multidisciplinary approaches to create stronger and more powerful teams. So as a leader, bring your people together, embrace what I call the multidisciplinary team structure, and then allow cross-disciplinary thinking to flourish.
Right. And that goes into what we talk about getting your teams in sync, not just with your internal team, but get those teams in sync with other divisions and departments. So you're now working with those people.
Absolutely. And
One of the greatest examples is the people who create software, the developers, and then the operators who have to really implement it. Those two teams for so long, and still in many organizations, don't communicate together. So there's about how do you get developers and operators, the DevOps teams, working together.
well, and if people need inspiration to do that, there's statistics that support the statement that
Mhm.
probability of breakthrough innovations increases by 64% when you have cross-disciplinary and multidisciplinary. 64% increase. I make that happen. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And it's not just taking it from within the organization that you have now. With that, it's stepping out to what do you know outside?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reality of it is when we are stuck in a silo, we don't bring in who we are on the outside. We don't bring it to the table. I did a conference the other day, and the chief financial officer was an obsessive Disney fan. And when I engaged her in discussion during our group session, everybody was just listening. And I turned and looked at someone and said, "Did you know that she was that obsessed with Disney?" They said, "Well, we know she has Disney stuff in her office. We didn't know she knew that much about the company." And I said, "So let's talk about what we can use about what she just brought to the table."
Yeah.
Because people don't volunteer that information because I- I'm a Disney freak. That might not make you an expert in chief financial work, but no, it does. And the more people see that, the better off it.
It brings it back to a more well-rounded leader.
Exactly. 100%.
And that's it. I've got friends who are very much into that and have actually embraced the Disney aspect of that.
Absolutely.
And that's what, with you and me, with our businesses of what we do, we're into so many different organizations. We learn so much about different places.
Yep.
And then we can actually bring that to the table for everybody else.
Absolutely. And by the way, there's a book called The Fifth Discipline, and it's all about systems thinking and how we have to think in systems. But what systems thinking really is the ability to see the interconnections and patterns within a system. And we do that when we have a holistic approach. And by the way, I joke with people and tell them, look for me, and people listening going, this guy got for stuff, whatever. Yeah. People want to call me a workaholic. Fine. But I don't wake up in the morning and ever do something I don't want to do.
Right. Right.
My whole day, my life is a party because I always have something I'm doing.
It's bringing you joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's wrap this up. Understand, make the list of what you bring to the table, what you've got. How far back should someone go? Do we go all the way back to our childhood, or do we just
Absolutely.
do we
Absolutely.
different businesses, college? I don't know that we want to go back talking about the time we had imbibed a little too much alcohol during our college days. But is there something that, give us an example of something that's kind of far-fetched that you've seen?
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorites is always, when people are younger and they got a job. What was your first job? And I'm going to ask you, what was your first career? What was your first job that you ever had that you made money doing?
Side of mowing yards for my father and for his property management company.
There you go.
Outside of that, it was retail in an electronics store.
Okay. Let's go to mowing lawns with your father, right?
Okay. I was 10, 12 years old.
Good. At 10 or 12 years old, if I ask you right now, put you on the spot and say, what did you learn from your father during those?
I learned how to mow a yard so that you don't mow the same pattern every week on the yard, or you'll create ruts and problems in the yard.
So now that is a beautiful lesson, because now the question is, I bet you and I could do an entire discussion about how that rule applies to teamwork.
Mhm.
Okay. Everything, no matter how far back you go, applies to what you do today. Absolutely.
Yeah. The one I use a lot is I got thrown out of a car at 16 years old, and I was scared to get back in a car and drive.
I get that.
Okay. My father told me, get in the car, drive your mother, because he was, 300 miles away because I was with my mom. And he says, get in the car, drive to the post office. Back in the day when you had to go to the post office and get the mail and pick it up and come back and call him.
Yeah.
And he said, when you get your ass knocked off the horse, you got to get your ass back on the horse. And that taught me a lot about resiliency and getting back up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So those are the things that we learn. We don't even sometimes know we're learning, is the point I'm getting at. Is that right?
No, and that's exactly what I'm saying. We forgot what we learned when we were younger. I mean, even if I go back to childhood with my grandfather, who was a sportscaster, by the way, back in the day before there were computers, and he remembered thousands and thousands and thousands of batting averages for players without having a computer to look them up. He had to remember them.
Mhm.
And I was fascinated by watching him do that. And it made me want to have a better memory. It made me want to learn more. And I think generally what I'm trying to say, if I can, since you said wrap it up, if I may,
Mhm.
I want people to understand it's your life. Everything you do should be part of who you are every day. It's permission to live your life. It's permission to do things outside of your lane that you love. It gives you the ability to become a one-person collaborative team, because everything you've ever done comes into the day to day with you. You will thrive when others are trying to survive. You'll start to see every challenge as a new opportunity. You're not going to conform to boxes anymore, and you're going to become innovative and powerful. And trust me, your fear will subside because you will have tried so many things. You're confident in it. You will feel like you can do it. You can feel like you are something magical out there doing these things. And trust me, I drink a lot of caffeine. You'll never be bored again.
Awesome. 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 I appreciate your time today with us on the Teamwork Advantage, Joe. It's been a privilege to see
Thank
you
you.
again. We'll catch up soon in different meetings somewhere along the line, I'm sure.
We will.
Folks, if you like this, reach out to Joe Curcillo and you'll get his information and contact information in our show notes. Be sure to check that out. Listen to him, work on this. Find something that you did 30 years ago. I'll challenge you to go back 30 years in your life.
Yes.
If you're only 25 years old, okay, maybe we can only go back about 15 years. But go back and think of one thing that made you happy when you were at that age. And what was that one thing that made you happy? Figure out how you can tie that into what you're doing today. Is that a fair enough exercise, Joe? For homework?
Absolutely. And I look forward to the results.
All righty. So thanks again, Joe, for joining us here on the Teamwork Advantage. If you want to get more about this, check out some of our other podcast episodes. We've got a lot of them out there. We've been downloaded in over 80 countries right now. So we're excited to bring ideas like this to you that can help you build your team, starting with your own internal team. Until next time, remember, never, ever have a good day, because that's just the end. Go make today and every day excellent and exceptional. Bye-bye.